I do think that a lot of, liver stagnation or whatever you want to call it, body stagnation and the emotional stagnation go hand in hand. And unfortunately, when someone's really stagnant physically, it can be very difficult for them to make the shifts in terms of their lifestyle that they need to be able to make, because they are just feeling emotionally, lethargic, stagnant, also indecision, like a lot of indecisiveness, feeling like you don't know who to trust, or you don't trust yourself, or not being able to take action on the things you should. So for me, like, I see it a lot in people, is that the physical and the emotional stagnation are 100% connected.
And do you find one needs to move first, or it's totally holistic and need to get movement in both?
I think ultimately movement in both, but sometimes it can be, the physical can be a good place to start, because if they can take action on that and then they can feel better, then that can give them the motivation to carry on. Um, but I think even, reflecting on my own kind of progress with my health, there's lots of things that I had studied or done in the past that I couldn't even take action on or couldn't even implement, because I just felt kind of depressed or lethargic or, congested. We use the word congestion a lot in the liver flushing community. And congestion can mean a whole host of things, from angry and upset to unable to digest your food, or having sleep issues or anger issues or losing your rag at people, all of that. When you start to remove the obstructions in your liver and you experience bile flow for the first time, and I'm sure you must have experienced this given you've done a liver flush, the euphoria that can come with that bile flow, and you realize, oh my goodness, this person who I've been for God knows how long, that thing that I thought was part of my personality isn't part of my personality at all. It's just part of this toxicity that I've been carrying around with me, because actually I realize, I mean, my personality, I would say, has evolved hugely and changed massively in the last few years. Like, I'm just becoming the person I always kind of should have been, but couldn't really, fulfill that potential.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. That's cool to hear. I totally agree. Like even these little, like I remember reading or maybe in one of these liver flush groups, but about the indecision, for example. And I never realized the extent that I had it, and I started paying attention to it. I'm like, "Oh my god." It takes me like 3 days to order a simple thing off Amazon for the house, because 'cause I'm like going back and forth, "Should I get this one or that one?" And it's like $10. And as the congestion started clearing out, it was like
Mhm.
boom, boom. I could just make a decision, no problem. I'm like, "Wow, this
Mhm.
is this is nicer." And the emotions too, like in my some point in my early 30s, I kind of became a little bit more aware of emotions and my emotional health or lack thereof. So I started really making it a point to, get more in touch with them, to work with them more. And I found it um, at some point really difficult. Like it just felt stuck and didn't move. And I did, so much self work, coaching work, workshops, all kinds of stuff. And after certain liver flushes, again, not every one every time, but certain times things would just move. And suddenly I'm like a happier, lighter person. I'm like, oh my gosh, all that heavy sludge, like emotional sludge. I'm like, I'm trying for years to move it or process it or, accept it. And then it's just not there anymore. I'm like, this is incredible. But very much like what you said, like this is who I always was. And there's just a bunch of junk stacked on top that I didn't even know about. But it was interesting to see and to go back to what we were chatting about just a little bit earlier, like making some movement physically really really drove some other emotional change too. But I know other people who've like they do get to the root of an emotional problem of a resentment to someone close to them, for example, and they are able to to let it go or release it or something, and then boom, physically they suddenly start feeling better. So it's very
Mm.
amazing the way everything's intertwined in the body.
Absolutely. And vice versa, I've noticed that as I've made physical progress with removing kind of historic layers of congestion from my liver, I've actually processed and dealt with perhaps regrets or things from my past that have just hung around in the sort of recesses of my brain for maybe the last 25 years. I had that experience recently. And what was really interesting, it sounds a bit esoteric, but I'm sure it's connected, is I started having a recurring this memory coming back again and again. And it was like it was coming to the surface, ready to be cleansed. I know it sounds nuts, but it felt like I'd always had this memory that I was this unresolved issue in my life that I kind of felt I'd never really dealt with. It would ebb and flow, but it would always come back. And then yeah, and then like about a year ago, I felt I was had dreaming about it a lot. And I was thinking about it during the day, and it felt like it was sort of almost swimming up to my conscious again and again. I thought, well, why is that happening? And as I flushed, it would get more intense afterwards. And then did this flush a few months ago, and it sort of went. And then when I thought about that memory again, it didn't have any of the emotional baggage that it had previously. So I felt like it was coming to the surface because it was sounds crazy. It was literally some kind of material that was connected to it at that time in my life that my liver had parceled up and put in that particular, pocket from my 20s.